So it's 5:35. Let's get started. Good evening. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Future of Everything speaking series by CSPA. California Software Professional Association is a volunteer-based 501c3 nonprofit. It was founded in 1988 by Silicon Valley legends. We host monthly events to promote innovation, entrepreneurship, and leadership. CSPA is honored to have Palo Alto City Councilman Greg Tanaka, CEO and founder of Portola, to share his vision for the future of finance. Greg is a visionary, an entrepreneur, a problem solver. Greg is a Caltech and Berkeley alumni. He's a serial entrepreneur. He founded a business analytics company, Portola. It is funded by some of the largest firms in Silicon Valley, including Andreessen Horowitz and Google Ventures. Let's welcome Greg. Greg, I'm going to make you the presenter.
Thank you, appreciate it. Let me try to share my screen and let's see here. Let me make sure I do it right. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see. I have so many monitors and so many screens open. I'm trying to like juggle all this. I think I got it. Okay. So we're talking about the future of finance, in particular, the future of cryptocurrency regulation. I'd like to try to keep this interactive. So as you guys have questions, thoughts, feel free to comment or see something, and I'll be happy to address it. So can you guys all see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you, Nikki, for the opportunity, and thank you for the awesome introduction. I'm also running for U.S. Congress, so that's my background. But while I'm talking about the future of cryptocurrency, I'm going to be talking about a lot of the regulations that are coming up. This is not legal advice, so there's a lot of unknowns here. So I'm not going to be your lawyer here, but I'll talk a lot about the impacts of the regulation that's coming up for cryptocurrency. So it sounds like there's only a few of you guys that actually are using cryptocurrency right now or have cryptocurrency. So I'll spend some time talking a little bit about what is cryptocurrency and some of the advantages, just to give some people some background. Okay, so what is cryptocurrency? Cryptocurrency is essentially a form of digital asset that is unusual in that it is verified by a large number of nodes or computers that verify via what's called a distributed ledger that you actually own something, right? Or that you actually have a certain amount of Bitcoin or Ethereum according to that blockchain. So it's very robust. It's something which a lot of the cryptocurrencies out there have some sort of cap in terms of how much can be mined or created, how much coin can be created. So like in the case with Bitcoin is 21 million. And some of the other ones have, like a limited cap. But you could do actually quite a few different things with these currencies. One of them, of course, is just a store of value, but a lot of them actually have smart contracts. So it essentially has a full programming language inside of them, like Ethereum and Solana and a bunch of others. So you could do some really, really interesting applications as a result. So the thing that's really unique about cryptocurrency is that it is, unlike the US dollar, which is issued by the US government, it is not issued by any one central authority. So like Bitcoin, the most famous of the cryptocurrency, was anonymously created by Satoshi, right? And we still don't quite know who that person really is. Definitely not me, but it's somebody or a group of people. Because of game theoretics, it's very difficult, if not possible, to manipulate or interfere. So it's been around for a while now, like a decade, and it's, I think it has like a, the whole cryptocurrency has multi-trillion-dollar market cap at this point, and the number of applications has increased dramatically. Initially, it was a lot about speculation and store value, but now with the idea of decentralized finance, there's a lot more applications that have opened up. Oh, by the way, let me try to open up the chat box. So if you guys have questions or, oh yeah, I see Kevin does. Kevin has cryptocurrency, and then a few other people sound like they do as well. So yeah, feel free to put a message in chat or just say something on the Zoom. So happy to have a dialogue about this. So yeah, so we're kind of moving into what a lot of people call the Web 3.0, which is, currency in general in the past has been very centralized, like PayPal or the US dollar. And now we're moving to this decentralized kind of currency. So what's the benefit of cryptocurrency? There's a lot, right? One is user autonomy. So the really nice thing about this is that you truly own it. There's not a trust in the government or trust in PayPal that it's going to be there and that it's going to have a certain value. It's something which allows you to be independent. In fact, some people use cryptocurrency to transfer money overseas, right? So they don't have to go through all the exchanges, and so there's no, like, it's harder to garnish wages like in cryptocurrency. It's truly decentralized, where there's not one central point of weakness in terms of trying to block it. So user autonomy is a really big one. The second big thing is, let me see if I could close my little bar here. I don't know how to do that. Oh, here it is. Okay. The second thing is wide accessibility. So it's probably one of the most democratic forms of money because there's no central authority. Does anyone here have like savings account? Right. If any of you guys have savings accounts, you'll know that it's like maybe like a 0.2, like I have a Schwab account, it gives me like 0.2% interest, right? It's truly horrible, right? It's like almost nothing. Mm-hmm. In the latest inflation reports, it says that we have something like 6% inflation. But if you look at the definition of CPI from like just a few decades ago, inflation would be like this year, like something like 14%, right? So it's pretty crazy, right? And if you look at the price of gas, look at the price of a lot of different things, it's gone up a lot. And the reason why is because the government can essentially print money, although they don't technically print money, but it's essentially that's what's happening. There's more dollars floating in the economy. And so you get this big rapid inflation. And with a lot of these digital assets, they can be programmed to be how much assets are there going to be and what kind of increase can there be. But the thing that decentralized finance based on cryptocurrency and this whole decentralized finance has been enabled by the smart contracts, like things like Ethereum or Solana or Cardano. There's a bunch of them that have these smart contracts. And what these allow you to do is basically start to replace the traditional centralized finance, like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, right? And so right now, like in the traditional finance industry, your savings account gets only like 0.2%, but your credit card interest rate is something like 20%, right? There's like a 2 orders of magnitude difference in the amount that you get by loaning your money versus the amount that it takes when you want to loan money, right? So it's a pretty big chunk of change. And the reason why is because there's all this regulation and all of these third-party financial companies in the stack that suck money out of borrowers and people who are loaning money. But with decentralized finance, it could shrink that margin from being, 2 orders of magnitude, something much, much less. So I don't know if any of you guys have like a Gemini or BlockFi account or are staking cryptocurrencies, but you can know that you get a much higher interest rate. So like with Gemini, for instance, you could, in a few minutes actually start earning like 7-8% interest, right, through some stable coins. And so that's the advantage, is that this big spread between what you get in your savings versus what you actually take, which you actually get in terms of loaning money, can be shrunk down tremendously because there's no middleman, right? It's all it's all through the decentralized finance system, where because of game theoretics, you basically are basically able to replicate the financial system without having all that overhead and all that value being sucked out of the system by these through regulation and the traditional finance system. So that's probably the biggest, most exciting part of cryptocurrency, or the area they call decentralized finance, is this ability to really chop down on the inefficiencies and the kind of value that's being taken by the financial companies, which, if you think about, all they're doing is taking like moving bits on a spreadsheet, right? Moving numbers on a spreadsheet. That's all they're really doing. They're not like, like what Vickers is doing and actually building a new search engine, right? Or like what my company does, which is so I have a subsidiary of my Portola, which is called Pika Group, where we actually write code to help people do algorithmic trading, right? Where we actually creating something. But a lot of the finance companies are just literally moving numbers back and forth on the spreadsheet. Kevin has a good question about, is DeFi applications available for Bitcoin or just Ethereum? So Ethereum is kind of like the thing that really enabled it. As I mentioned, Ethereum actually has a full-blown programming language. Bitcoin has some programmability, but not nearly as much as Ethereum. And the big advantage of that is that you can do smart contracts. So you could couple game theoretics or game theory together with contracts that automatically execute through software. And then there's a whole area of stable coins which provide liquidity. And then there's like Compound. There's a whole bunch of other layers that have been put on top of these currencies. So Bitcoin is part of the ecosystem, as is Ethereum, and as is a bunch of these other currencies like Solana and a bunch of others. So this is what kind of makes this DeFi, decentralized finance, happen. It's not just one. It's not just Ethereum. It's not just Bitcoin. It's all this stuff put together. So pretty much what's happening is the whole entire financial system, the whole entire centralized finance system, is being replicated through decentralized finance. So anything you could think of is pretty much being done in decentralized finance, and it's happening much more efficiently, 24/7. So in the end, the consumers benefit. You get better rates for your loan, and you also get better interest rates when you're saving money. So it's a big win for the consumers. The other benefit of cryptocurrency is just privacy. So basically, what you do with your money is really your business, and other people can't see it. So that's kind of the advantage, the third advantage. Although this is probably less important. Probably the biggest advantage is the decentralized finance aspect, the block in the center. Now, with all this advantages, you would think that we would do all that we possibly can to support this type of unique form of innovation. But actually, no. In fact, if you look at countries like China, they really cracked down. They really, like a lot of the crypto now is like totally leaving China, even the mining. But even here in the United States, so you would think that given that China has cracked down so much on mining and just crypto in general, that would be a great opportunity for us, right? Crypto is very kind of aligned to democracy and empowering the individual. But actually, crypto is very much under attack. So today, the House of Representatives is going to be voting on HR 3684, or what's known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this, but this is one of the big things going through. It's a multi-trillion-dollar bill going through the Congress. It was initially initiated by the Senate, and largely supposed to help the infrastructure, which in the United States we have crumbling infrastructure, and so improving our infrastructure I don't think has been much debate in terms of do we need to improve our infrastructure. But the really weird thing is that in this infrastructure bill, there was a small provision about crypto that was snuck into the bill that has incredibly negative ramifications on the success of the American crypto industry. Crypto has the potential to be as big as the internet, right? I would say right now, if we were to look at internet time, maybe like, Mosaic, when Mosaic came out, was kind of like the beginning of the internet, right? We are kind of like maybe near the Mosaic age right now, right? We're kind of just as the internet starts. So this decentralized currency is just now kind of starting, even though it's, it happened for 10 years. It's kind of like internet. They started out with ARPANET like 10 years earlier, but it didn't take off until, many decades later. But crypto is kind of on that track as well, where it has humongous advantages. I mean, just in terms of, you think about how much value these finances can be sucked out of our financial system without adding a whole lot of value. This allows a lot more efficiencies, right? It empowers a lot more people to get access to loans, right? It helps the poor who, a lot of them are really hurt by payday loan, right? And lack of credit. And so it has a potential to really be a huge win for so many different people in our country. But it's under attack, right? And so maybe before I get into the specifics of and again, keep the questions coming on either on chat or just unmute yourself. But before I get into the infrastructure bill, let me talk a little bit about the history of crypto regulation. So last year, end of last year, it was known, the U.S. Treasury Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is known as FinCEN, proposed a rule that required banks and fintech to report customer information to FinCEN on any transaction of cryptocurrency worth over $10,000. The reporting would have to be done within 10 days. So this was a bit onerous, and this proposed rule was ultimately discarded due to the opposition that this rule was unconstitutional, could lead to mass collection of individuals' personal information. So this rule, was something that the Treasury Department put out, but didn't actually go anywhere. But it was pretty much both sides of the aisle kind of pushed for this. So even though cryptocurrency kind of started here and has has a potential to be as big as the internet and add as much value as the internet, it's already kind of starting to be clamped down. Maybe not to the extent that China is doing in China in its borders, but it's something that was pretty close. So let me talk about what happened in August. So the infrastructure bill has been a key part of the Biden administration plan, and they've been working hard on it. A lot of good things in it, but one thing that came up was, well, how do we pay for it, right? It's $1 trillion+, right? How are they going to pay for all this? And so I think some of the folks there looked at oh, let's get money from crypto, right? So then you start seeing all this stuff from inside the Senate, basically putting incredible regulation on crypto, that so much so that, and now as I go through this presentation, I think someone argued that this has the potential of effectively killing the crypto industry, this kind of emerging industry in our country. And initially, I think people thought that this was, was a mistake. People thought they can't be serious about what they're trying to do, right? But as it turns out, no, they were serious, and they were looking at it because it could fund not a big portion, but provide billions of dollars towards the infrastructure. And not that we don't need better infrastructure, but the way it makes it happen essentially makes it a killer for the industry. Okay, Andrew asked a good question. What does crypto do to show it is anti-money laundering compliance? So that's a good question. So anytime you want to put money into crypto, like through Coinbase or Gemini or BlockFi or any of the other companies, exchanges, you have to go through what's known as KYC, or know your customer. And so to do that, you have to prove that who you are, right? You have to prove that you're here. You have to verify your address, all this kind of stuff. So that's how they provide anti-money laundering, is through the know your customers. And there's also rules, and I'll talk more about this in detail, but you have to issue 1099s. So there's also that. So yeah, and then the other thing that happened, and it just started happening yesterday, was a report was released from, and by the way, this I forgot to mention, this provision in the infrastructure bill actually came from the Treasury Department. And the other thing that came from the Treasury Department was today. So I don't know if you guys know what stable coins are. Stable coins is basically, oh, actually, wait, sorry, Andrew, add on. Is it common practice for international law? Andrew, I'm not sure what you mean by that question, so maybe expand upon it. What does crypto do to show it is anti-money compliance? Is it common? Is it common practice? I'm not sure. Maybe Andrew, you could expand a little bit more on the question. I'm not sure I followed it, but okay. Anyways, in terms of stable coins, there's something like $130 billion in circulation, and this provides a lot of liquidity in terms of moving from crypto to dollars or crypto to whatever currency. And so one of the regulations, and I can't necessarily just say this is a bad thing, but one of the regulations is to treat them like banks, so that essentially there has to be like there's a stable coin out there called Tether, which you know, a lot of reports say that they claim they have one to, like, for every, you know, stable coin Tether USDT, it's backed by a US dollar, and they found that that's not quite true, right? And so the Treasury now is asking that this be that the stablecoin issues be treated like a traditional bank, and some of this is probably well reasoned, and some of it may not be. So anyway, so this is kind of like a new regulation that's just started to come out yesterday. But back to the crypto provision. So the crypto provision language was pre-approved by the U.S. Treasury Department, and in Congress it was popular. And the reason why people supported it was because it helps defray some of that $1.2 trillion that's going to be for the infrastructure bill. And the estimation in terms of how much it would raise is roughly about $28 billion. Although, you know, how they came up with this is kind of a bit suspect. And so there's a lot of kind of question as to really how much is it really. And so you know, I think the reason why the Treasury Department pushed for this is because they are trying to expand their jurisdiction beyond just what's called custodial intermediaries, or what you guys know as brokers, like Coinbase, and trying to get more surveillance of the financial activity, because they're thinking that there's a lot of people who aren't paying their taxes with crypto. And so it's kind of a continuing effort from what I said earlier, which is this earlier regulation. They're basically trying to track the money better so they could collect the taxes. I think that's the basic idea. The reality, though, is that if this proposal was a standalone bill, there probably would have been no chance that it would have moved forward. But instead, this crypto provision is like, you know, like maybe like 4 pages out of 2,700 pages inside the infrastructure bill, that, you know, because the infrastructure is really needed and a lot of people are behind the infrastructure bill, will probably pass. But you know, having this come in by itself, it would not have happened. Okay, so what does this all mean? Buried in the report is section 8603, information reporting for brokers and digital assets. And what this essentially does is that it changes the definition of what is a broker, right? So some of you guys on this call might not think you're a broker, but with the infrastructure bill passing, you become a broker. So what this means is that every single person, like whether you're mining Bitcoin, you're a software developer, you hold Bitcoin in your wallet, you do just about anything related to cryptocurrency or digital assets, you have to start reporting all this stuff to the IRS, right? And even for relatively low dollar amounts. And I'll get into more detail about what this means. So, the other thing is that, this is triggered on anyone that receives more than $10,000 in assets. You have to get the other person's counterparty social security number, address, all the kind of personal information, and submit what's known as a 8300 to the government within 15 days.
Right.
So, yeah.
Quick question. Is it
Sure,
10,000 total in assets, or is it per transaction?
Okay. It's a good question. So let me, this is a good segue. Let me flip to, I did some sketching here before this. I draw like a 2-year-old. So you guys are going to have to forgive me in terms of the quality of drawing here, but I drew some pictures here. Okay. Just to kind of illustrate. So let's take a simple example. So let's say there's one person. Let me make it bigger. So let's say there's one person, and they're going to sell like a bottle of water to another person for what's equivalent to $5 of Bitcoin. Okay. In this example here, if that's all that happens, neither party has to issue a 1099 or the 8300 or it's 8300 830. I forgot the name. Okay. Yeah, no, it's actually 8300. I wrote this wrong. Sorry about that. So this form here, you have to fill out this form, or the 1099, which is let me see, do I have it on here? Well, okay, I'll look for it later. Oh wait, here. Yeah, here it is. This is what a 1099 looks like. So anyone that has hired independent contractors know that you have to issue this 1099 to people that you pay, right? And then when you're a broker, you kind of have to do this. You have to issue this form to 8300. Okay, so now let me get back to my little whiteboard here. Okay, so if it's just $5, that's fine. But what happens with the infrastructure bill is that the miners, the people who validate this transaction, right? So the way Bitcoin works is the reason why people mine Bitcoin is because they're validating their transactions. The miners get swept into this, into the regulation. So let me kind of explain why. So every day there's about 400,000 transactions of Bitcoin every day, right? As an example. And there's about 1 million miners, and there's about Bitcoin's about $60,000 per Bitcoin, roughly. So what this works out to be is that in terms of US dollars, this is $24,000 a day, right? So each miner, if you're mining Bitcoin right now and you let your computer run for a day, it's processing roughly about $24,000 worth of Bitcoin every single day, right? You're not getting $24,000. You're going to get much less in terms of mining fees, right? But you're essentially transacting about $24,000 worth of value, right? And because of that, you get swept into the infrastructure bill, right? You're suddenly now, so basically on this slide, everything in my little whiteboard here, everything red is new from the infrastructure bill. Okay, just to make it clear. Okay, so in this case, for the individual parties, don't have to report anything, but for the miners, a lot of reporting. Okay, so oh shoot. Okay, so before the infrastructure bill, and I apologize that my writing's atrocious. Just the direct parties would have to do 1099s. They didn't actually have to do 8300s, right? But after the infrastructure bill, there was stuff in red: software developers, miners, wallets, people who stake their or basically loan out their cryptocurrency. Anyone and every, even people peripherally involved, have to now do 1099s and 8300 forms, right? The two forms I showed you earlier. And also now even the direct parties have to do 8300 forms. Okay, so this is what's new from the infrastructure bill, right? Now, one big problem here is, well, which software people, right? Well, okay, Coinbase, right? An exchange already has to do it, right? But does Satoshi, the guy who did Bitcoin, does he have to do it too? Does the people like, and Satoshi didn't write, all the crypto libraries and they're like, RSA and all that stuff. He didn't write that. He's using the libraries. So do the crypto library people have to do it? And a lot of this crypto stuff runs on Linux. So does Linus Torvald, the inventor of Linux, have to do this, right? Have to do all the reporting? So it's really not clear. This regulation is really broad, but it's wide sweeping. Basically, they're trying to touch anyone and everyone who is involved with this, right? Even if you're tangentially involved, which is crazy. Now, we'll know how the regulation gets interpreted, but right now it's a super broad regulation, right? So even people who maybe you wrote, a shell script on Linux, maybe do you have to report now? So there's a lot of kind of open questions. Okay, so let's go to the next example. So let's say you buy like a car from someone, right? That's worth $10,000 per transaction. You now have to file the 8300 form, okay? You don't have to do a 1099, but you have to file the 8300 form, okay? And then, sorry, up here, sorry, I gotta be clear. So if you're a minor, an individual minor, you don't have to do a 1099, but if you're a company, you must do a 1099, right? So all minors that are run by a company, this is kind of really vague language, but the way we read it, this looks like this looks like it's the case. But the problem with this is that a lot of the minors have no idea who they're valuing the transaction for. It's totally anonymous. So the problem with that is how the heck are the minors going to get people's social security numbers and their physical address and their name? They don't even know it's all anonymous, and it's going across a bunch of different other minors who are all validating the transaction. So this makes it almost untenable to be a minor because you couldn't fulfill the 1099 compliance. And there's some real penalties that are associated with the 1099. I'll get more into that. Okay, again, I might be confusing the hell out of everyone. So please, guys, if I'm confusing you, raise your hand or say something, okay? If it's not clear, just let me know. I'm more than happy to kind of be more clear. Okay, so anyway, so this is the regulation for the minors and also basically everyone in this this kind of big sweeping thing, that infrastructure bill, right? So anyone that's tangentially related, before, it's probably reasonable for the direct parties to have to report, right? But for everyone tangentially involved in the transaction to also suddenly be swept into all this reporting is pretty crazy impossible, right? Like practically is really impossible. Like especially if you go down the software stack, right? It makes zero sense that they have to do all this regulation and all this reporting, but they had nothing to do with the transaction. They just have to write the software, right? Okay, so hopefully I'm jumping around a bit, but I'm hoping that my picture here is clear enough. Okay, so this person here, this needs to issue the 8300 form, right? So that's basically this form, right? And this is it's a pretty complex form. It's not so simple. Okay, now if the parties transact cumulatively for the year $20,000, right? Then what the crypto provision says is it treats crypto as cash, right? And if you give someone cash, like you pay someone cash for something, you have to issue a 1099. So basically the person giving the Bitcoin to this person, for the cumulatively for that year, has to issue a 1099. That means you must get that person's personal information, their tax ID, where they live, their name, all that kind of stuff to fill out the 1099 form, right? So the 1099 form looks like this if you guys haven't seen it. So it's so it's basically, you gotta have both people's number, you gotta have their address. So you gotta have all this and submit it to the IRS. And there's big penalties if you don't do that. Okay, so that's this case, right? So this is like a, cryptocurrency for goods type of scenario. Any questions about this before I go to the next scenario?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. Hopefully everyone's following along here. Okay, so now let's get into the point where, let's say, Nikki, Nikki, I'm going to give you $5 worth of Bitcoin, and you give me $5, right? Okay, let's say we're just doing a direct transaction. So you and I meet, hand you a $5 bill, and then you transfer, or let's say you hand me a $5 bill, and I give you, $5 worth of Bitcoin to your wallet, right? Okay, in this transaction, neither one of us had to do the 8,300 or 1099. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Of course, all the miners and everyone else tangentially involved still have to do it though. Okay. Now, in the case of let's say if you go up to $600 per transaction, right? Suddenly both parties need to do the 1099. Okay, that means both parties. Okay, and in all these cases, all the people doing the mining and software developers, all them stuff to report. Even though I would argue it's impossible for them to actually do that, right? Especially the miners, they have no idea who's on the other side of these transactions. And there's not even a way for them to communicate to them. So what happens here is that both parties have to issue 1099s. Whenever you're giving cash to someone, you have to issue 1099. You have to report the other person got cash. But now, because cryptocurrencies are treated as cash, you also have to do it the other way as well, right? So both parties have to issue 1099s. Okay. Okay, last scenario. Last scenario here is let's say you do $10,000 per transaction, or okay, if you do $10,000 per transaction, then you suddenly need to start doing the 8,300 form, right? Or if it's $20,000 a year cumulative, you have to issue a 1099, right? So that's how the new regulation impacts you. Okay, is that clear? I feel like these diagrams are a little bit too complicated, but I don't know if they make sense. But okay, anyways, I'll move on unless anyone has questions. Oh yeah, Kevin, I have my information at the end, so you're welcome to email me and I can send it to you. And anyone else that's interested in the presentation. Let me get back to the
presentation is being recorded, so I'll share the recording.
Thank you, Nikki. I'm trying to figure out how to get back to my screen here. What happened to my presentation? Here, let me start this again. Okay, so kind of went over the mechanics of how that works. The penalty, okay, so what happens if you don't issue a 1099? So basically, the penalties are listed here, right? So if you're a large business with over $5 million, you can see the penalty could be like, $3 million up to $3 million, $3.3 million, right? If you fail to file at all, depending on how late you are, right? If you're a small business or someone with less than $5 million, then it's it could go up to about $1.1 million. So that's a lot of money. For most people, that's a lot of money. It could be a pretty big penalty for not complying with the 1099. So you can imagine yourself if you're a small time software developer who just happened to have something that your software got stuck into someone's crypto project. Suddenly now you might be obligated to do 1099, which would be literally impossible because you have no idea who the counterparties were, right? Or if you're a minor, you don't know who the counterparties are either. Okay, so what's wrong with this? This broker requirement is, first of all, it's not too bad if you are like Coinbase and you're a large company, you have a whole bunch of people in compliance and can handle all the regulations and do all the filings. But for individuals, it gets to be really, really onerous, especially when it's a relatively small transaction. And the big part is the whole cryptocurrency is kind of built on everything's kind of anonymous. You don't really know who's who, and so it's like fundamentally impossible for people to actually comply to this. It makes it really, really hard. It's almost effectively what like China did. China did explicitly, but this is almost doing implicitly. It makes it super hard to comply with the law. So yeah, so the main point of this is that the provision is just way too broad. I think the idea was to make sure that they could get everyone to report so that they could collect more taxes. But I think there's a fundamental lack of understanding about how the cryptocurrency works, right? Because if Congress knew actually how the cryptocurrency worked, they would not put a law like this because it's crazy hard and impossible to actually comply with it. So what were the proposed solutions? So before it left the Senate, got approved by the Senate, there were a few group of senators who came together to try to fix this. So one of them is the White and Loomis-Tomei amendment, and basically it would have narrowed the definition of what a broker is. So individual users, right, who are just using Bitcoin to to earn more interest, to stake. They're not really brokers. They're more like end users. Would not be considered as brokers. So that would have excluded them. And the second thing is it would require exemption for miners, right? Because miners have no idea, or stakers don't know who's going to be borrowing their crypto, or validators, or hardware software wallet providers, and all these other people who are not involved in the transaction, directly involved in the transaction, right? Yeah, miners are involved in that, they're validating the transaction, but they're not actually counterpart. They're not actually the ones involved in the business per se, right? So this would have been great had this got passed, but I think from a fundamental lack of understanding by our Congress members, who unfortunately are not very tech savvy, this did not make it. This did not get over the line. I think in general we don't want tax cheats, but again, we don't want to make it so onerous to actually make it impossible to do cryptocurrency. And there was another amendment, the Portman-Warner-Sinema amendment, and the problem with this one is that it didn't really fix it, right? It would have given some air cover to Congress people, say, oh yeah, I voted for the amendment, but it doesn't solve the problem, because pretty much, Ethereum is going to, instead of proof of work, it's proof of stake, right? So they wouldn't have been covered. So a lot of miners still wouldn't have been covered. And then a lot of the other actors, a lot of the other people involved in this ecosystem wouldn't have been covered. And so it basically would still have this kind of super big chilling effect in crippling the cryptocurrency industry. Okay, so unfortunately, because Congress members, there are very few Congress members who are engineers, software engineers, or any engineer at all. A lot of them are lawyers. A lot of them are very non-technical if any of you guys ever watch C-SPAN, you watch some of our Congress member interview, CEOs of these tech companies, is pretty jaw-dropping in terms of how fundamental lack of understanding about how technology works. Unfortunately, this is not the first time. There's other things like the Patriot Act, Section 230, where you have this really broad, vague language, not really well thought out, that basically has some major flaws, like flaws that make it sometimes a regulation unworkable. And unfortunately, it looks like for the infrastructure bill, this also has that in there, and it's unlikely, unfortunately, to get pulled out of the infrastructure bill by the House, which should be voting on it soon. So, I think, with China cracking down, okay, so if you guys don't know, China is now the second largest economy. They are looking to be number one, right, in so many different things, in AI and nuclear energy, and they have this whole Belt and Road initiative, and they're really trying to become the number one country in the world. And the United States has been fortunate to held that place. The U.S. dollar is the global currency. It's like oil is priced in dollars, right? A lot of loans are priced in dollars. But right now China's working on what's called a central bank digital currency, CBDC, and basically, there's a concerted effort to displace the U.S. dollar. We don't realize that we enjoy, despite this really high inflation rate, we enjoy relatively low interest rates because the dollar is such a dominant global currency. But as this gets chipped away, especially by like let's say for instance China's central bank digital currency, that gets to be a lot harder. And so really what this country should be doing is, I think we should be embracing cryptocurrency, right? And all the benefits it offers, right? It's literally like the new internet. It's like the internet, people call it Web 3.0. It's a way to make the financial industry it's like the internet for the financial industry, right? It makes it much more efficient, a lot more transparent, a lot faster, right? You don't have to worry about the bank hours. Everything just happens. The fees are a lot lower. It's a lot easier to get loans. It could really grow the economy. So we should really be embracing this. But instead, we're kind of like putting on the brakes here, which is unfortunate, because I think with China kicking out the miners, because China used to have over 50% of the mining, right? And now it's kicked out of the country. So it gave the chance for the United States to be number one for cryptocurrency. So yeah, and there's these groups now that have nothing to do with the actual transaction, now getting swept into this, right? Which makes their business almost unworkable. And so it makes no sense. It's like here in Palo Alto. So I'm on the Palo Alto City Council. So besides running a augmented trading startup, I'm also on the Palo Alto City Council. In the Palo Alto City Council, we have this anti-idling ordinance, which is a little bit ridiculous because we've yet to enforce this anti-idling ordinance, right? So it's basically you're not allowed to idle a car for more than a certain amount of time, but we've never been able to enforce. It's really hard to enforce. And I would almost argue cryptocurrency is almost like that, because every single computer could do cryptocurrency. And everyone has computers. In fact, most people have multiple computers, right? If you look at my desk here, I have like 12 monitors. I have 3 computers. I have a computer on my wristwatch. I have a computer with my iPhone. I mean, it's like trying to empty the ocean, yeah, with a cup, right? You're trying to empty the ocean with a cup. It's like, it's crazy impossible. I think the genie's out of the bottle with cryptocurrency, right? All this stuff's open source. I mean, how would you possibly enforce this? How would you get everyone to get the level of reporting? It's like not practical. And in fact, for some people, it's literally impossible. But I think just the total lack of understanding of how the cryptocurrency works, how the whole decentralized finance works. I think a lot of members of Congress think that, cryptocurrency is scammers and it's like a Ponzi scheme. And maybe I think, 10 years ago, that's largely what it was. But cryptocurrency now, with the whole decentralized finance, has the ability to really disrupt and really make the financial system way more efficient and a lot more fair than it is today. But I think, unfortunately, because members of Congress are not very up with technology, the benefits of decentralized finance is being lost. So I think someone asked a little bit about anti-money laws, AML. And so this is the other thing. I should kind of show my diagram, but basically, if you have digital asset transaction above 10K, you have to collect all the know your customer information. So that's the thing. I talked a little bit about it on the other slide, but this just kind of spells it out a bit. So here's the slide version of kind of what I talked about before. But let's say someone pays 0.16 Bitcoin, right, which is about $10,000. The business must verify the sender's personal information, including their social security number. So can you imagine, let's say you went to buy a car from Auto Trader, right? And or you went to you know, Tesla. There you go. Well, you can't buy Tesla for $10. Because Tesla is like $50,000 or $60,000, right? That's like more like one Bitcoin. But basically, you must report, right, for the form 8300, and you got to do it within 15 days, right? And then if you don't, right, the failure, right? So if you're a Bitcoin miner not doing this, you could get a felony, 5 years of prison, right? Can you imagine that? 5 years of prison, right? Plus a fine of up to $25,000. So it's hard to know whether this is really what they mean to do, but it's dangerous, right? It's something which it has this cloud of uncertainty over the whole crypto industry, and it's unnecessary. I think just with just a better understanding of what decentralized finance is and how cryptocurrency works, there's no need to have this kind of onerous regulation. So, you know, innovation's under attack. You know, we only have to look at how the crypto provisions were tucked into this year's infrastructure bill, which had nothing to do with infrastructure, right? And you know, I think they've unfortunately put this above innovation, and it's unfortunate. You know, I think the idea that the government should track every single financial transaction without any probable cause is also a pretty big serious concern. You know, our financial information kind of reveals everything about who we are, from our shopping preferences to our political affiliations. And the misclassification of the crypto entities just really punishes people who have nothing to do with what's going on, like miners or software developers, and the people who are trying to provide innovation. And so, you know, this law is not going to go into effect until January 2023. So it's about a year to fix it, and hopefully we can reverse it. But I think we need to hold our elected officials accountable for this negligence and disregard for progress. And we should be doing as much as we can, especially with what China has done to accelerate the growth of the crypto industry, to create more avenues for Americans to use cryptocurrencies in our daily lives, and get rid of kind of unnecessary regulations like what's in this infrastructure bill that's going to stifle innovation. I truly believe decentralized finance is the future, and I think you know, a government needs to, you know, get with the times. And to be honest, this is one of the reasons why I'm running for Congress, is because I think we need. I'm running on the platform of you know, legislator for the digital age. We need people who are a little bit more tech savvy in Congress. So I want to welcome everyone here to reach out to me. You can go to my website. This is my contact information. We're also having a networking event on the 13th, and everyone's welcome to attend. So just check out this URL here. And also I want to thank William. He's my legislative aide who helped me put together this presentation. So I just wanted to take time now just to open up to any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Greg. That was super insightful.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions directly to Greg.
So, hi, Greg. You know, I just have a quick question. This new regulation that you're talking about, so this requires reporting for any transaction above 10,000?
No, it's more complicated than that. That's why I had this whole whiteboard here. It's crazy complicated. So you're gonna need to get a tax lawyer or something like that to truly understand this stuff. So okay, so if you're just a miner, if you set up your computer to start mining, right? Like for instance, Bitcoin, right? Because you're processing more than $24,000 worth of transactions a day, you suddenly are swept into all of this, you know, 1099 and 830, right? Sorry, 8300. You got to issue these forms to everyone. And even though you have no friggin' idea who these people are, you have no way of contacting them. You don't have their email address. You don't know their name. You certainly don't know their social security or their address, right? But suddenly you got to do that. And if you don't do that, you risk fines of millions of dollars, right? Right? Like much, and especially if you're only getting like $20 a day worth of Bitcoin, right? You're just part of a mining pool, right? You have no idea, right? And then if you just happen to be kind of tangentially related or tangentially associated with any of this, like you're providing a wallet, like your MetaMask, or you're like, you know, you're staking your currency, or you're, you know, you did some software development. It's really vague as to are you involved? Like like where's that line? That language is super vague, so it's not clear as to where that line is, right? But it looks like a whole bunch of unrelated parties get swept into reporting on the 1099 and 830. 1099, you know, big gigantic fines, multi-million dollar fines. 830, 8,300, jail, right? You're talking 5 years jail, right? So it's pretty like outrageous in terms of what's inside this provision. But back to your point about when is it trigger? So if you do anything related to crypto, essentially, you better talk to a lawyer and make sure you don't, you know, you're not going to go to prison, right? That's what it means. Now you don't have to wait until January of, you know, like a year from now. But in terms of if you're just, you know, trading cryptocurrency as a user, so the black people, the little black stick figures represent, you know, when do you have to do 1099, when you have to do 8,300, right? So, so basically, you know, in this first case, if it's like not that much money, like $5, you don't have to worry about anything. The miners have to worry, right? And the exchanges have to worry, but you don't have to worry. If you do $10,000 transaction, then suddenly you have to do the 830, or sorry, 8,300. And then if you do a cumulative of 20K transactions, right? Then you have to do it
over what period? A whole year?
a whole year, yeah. So let's say you want to live, let's say you're in El Salvador, you're an American in El Salvador. So El Salvador, you can use Bitcoin for everything, right? So if you do 20K worth of Bitcoin or whatever currency, you suddenly have to do a 1099 as well, right? Yeah, and then in some cases, like in the case of, let's say, you know, you're trading, you know, dollars for Bitcoin, then the limit is $600, right? And both parties need to do 1099 versus just one. So before just this party had to do it. Now, now, oh man, I can't draw on my thing anymore. Okay, let me see if I could get my pen to work again.
See, if I tomorrow go out by 0.16 Bitcoin, which is a little over 10,000, what do I have to do?
Okay, so let me get to, so you buy it, right? So if you buy it,
Buy from Coinbase.
Yeah, so you buy it on Coinbase. So I'm just trying to get my thing working here. So if you do on Coinbase, if you buy 10,000 worth of Bitcoin, basically there's a 8,300 involved and a 1099 involved, right? So both parties have to issue a 1099, and then the person who bought this, right, has to issue 8,300.
Which is me. Say I'm buying.
Yeah, you're buying it. So this be you, Nikki, here, right? So you're giving $10,000, you're getting $10,000 with the Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
You suddenly have to do 8,300, and you also have to issue a 1099, and this guy also has to issue 1099.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But if you're just a miner, just doing an ordinary miner, but you're not, you know, you're making $20 a day from your mining, right? From your mining rig or whatever, you're suddenly swept into all of this as well, which I think is incredibly unfair.
If you're just doing a transaction like what Nikki said, you know, buying Bitcoin,
Yeah.
wouldn't the reporting be handled by the wallet, you know, like Coinbase or somebody?
No, unfortunately not. So it used to be like that, right? But the red circles, anything in red basically means new with the infrastructure bill, right? Now, this is taking the infrastructure bill with this broader language. Maybe they didn't really mean this, right? So there's laws, and then how they actually implement the laws may be a lot less onerous. But if you read it, you know, as face value, like both parties got to report, because Bitcoin now is considered to be considered to be treated as cash, right? So if you give like cash to someone, you have to issue a 1099. So before you also, yeah, if you give cash to someone, you have to do a 1099. But if you do Bitcoin now or any cryptocurrency, you also have to do the 1099. So both parties have to. Yeah. Now again, this. Sorry, Nikki, go ahead.
Kevin has a question for you. What are the chances that will pass both Senate and the House?
Well, it already passed the Senate, and it's likely to pass the House. It was supposed to be voted on today, so I don't think it passed yet, but it will probably pass the House soon. but it has support for the House. I think the only issue right now is the only reason why the infrastructure bill hasn't passed is because the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is holding it up because they want some other stuff happening, right? But not because of the crypto. But I think there's enough support for the infrastructure bill to pass, and there's not enough support. There's not enough tech savvy people in Congress to understand that by doing this, it's misguided. Yeah, right. It's basically not. I don't think they're going to get those tens of billions of dollars from this. Instead, I think they're going to kill the crypto industry. If the Treasury Department really fully goes to the full extent of what's inside the infrastructure bill, if they fully enforce it, it's going to be really hard. Now, maybe there will be enough complaints out there that people will be like, oh, okay, well, just kidding. We don't mean to make it so onerous. Maybe that will happen. But if you take it as it's written right now, it's pretty scary. And Biden said he's going to sign this bill too. So it's not the president's not going to veto it. So a year from now, we might all have to be getting some. If you have crypto, you might have to be getting a tax lawyer to help you figure out what happened. But good question.
Yeah, scary.
Yeah, I think the really sad part here is just the promise of decentralized finance is so huge, right? It's as big as internet itself. I think traditional cryptocurrency where it's just speculating on these kind of shitcoin type stuff, that's one thing, right? But what's happened recently or the past like 3-4 years is this decentralized finance idea, which is built on top of cryptocurrency, which unfortunately I think a lot of people think of, oh, this cryptocurrency is just a libertarian idea about people who want to cheat on the tax system. But it's not that, actually. Cryptocurrency has evolved to be something that's eliminating a lot of the financial middlemen, right? So it's grown from the initial, initial idea of cryptocurrency to something that's more about replacing the existing financial system, making it a lot more efficient. So you better believe a lot of the traditional, right, people in the financial systems don't want a cryptocurrency because it's going to steal the lunch, right? It's going to basically make the financial system way more efficient. And so some of that's also why I think this happens, because the traditional centralized financial systems doesn't want decentralized finance to be in there, because it's equivalent to like newspapers and how they lost all the ad revenue because of the internet, right? So they don't, like, the traditional newspapers don't want the internet, right? And very much like the traditional newspapers didn't want the internet, the traditional finance companies don't want decentralized finance, because that 2 orders of magnitude spread that they get right now between what their savings rate and what you get if you take a loan out on your credit card, they want to keep that profit, right? They want to keep that 2 order of magnitude spread, right? But that's not good for the consumer. That's not good for us. So yeah, good question. Any other questions?
Are you concerned about the high transaction costs? People talk about the gas fee is so high.
Oh, yeah. So
And,
just
so is it really efficient if the gas fee is so high?
Yeah. So actually, all you might not know, but in Ethereum, they have this concept of gas fees, right? It could be like $40-50 per transaction, right? Or like Bitcoin, sometimes it takes forever to transact, and so the gas fee is like this transaction cost, and so Ethereum is actually moving to proof of stake, right? Which is a big deal, because I just talked about it earlier. So like even this amendment, which neither one of these made it, by the way, but even this one here is only proof of work. So Ethereum is going to go to proof of stake. So it's not going to be it's going to be the transaction way more efficient. So they're going to be a lot cheaper because each node can process a lot more. And then there's other cryptocurrencies like Solana, which is way like several orders of magnitude more efficient. So there's cryptocurrencies like that. So it would really reduce the gas fees and make it much more practical. But the other thing that's happening is just because there's so many of these other cryptocurrencies coming online, and they're all kind of tied together through various third parties and through stable coins that like, for instance, a lot of the NFT type stuff. I'm not sure if you guys know what non-fungible tokens are, but a lot of that stuff it was on Ethereum. Now it's trying to move to Solana because it's a lot lower transaction fees, a lot lower gas fees. So good point. Okay, any other questions, comments, thoughts? Well, I'd like to say one thing, which is I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't really follow politics very much. I know a lot of people in the tech sector are so busy just, trying to, do their work that they don't really follow like politics very much. But it's important because increasingly, a lot of what Congress is regulating is technology. And so it's important to at least be somewhat involved, right? And kind of tuned in. Because otherwise you get stuff like this, right? You get this like crazy provision in the infrastructure bill, which is incredibly damaging to a new industry. You look at the e-commerce, right? E-commerce in their first few years that it was around, there was no sales tax, right? It really helped bootstrap the e-commerce industry, the buying online. And now it's huge, right? Amazon, all these companies are huge. And if we didn't have this, think about how it would be during the pandemic, right? It'd be really tough, right? But same thing could be said with decentralized finance and crypto, is that this is a very early industry. It's very fragile, right? Nikki talked a little bit about the gas fees, right? There's still a lot of like rough edges here, and by settling this industry with so much regulation and so much cost and burden, it threatens to squash the innovation, like the very much innovation that happened with e-commerce. It could happen in the financial industry, right? Just as the internet revolutionized commerce, retail, right? Decentralized finance has the opportunity to revolutionize our financial system. But if we let these kind of regulations happen, if we have people in Congress who don't really know what's going on, you really lose opportunity, right? This is an opportunity for our country to really make our financial system way more efficient, right? You think about mortgage papers, you think about getting a loan from the bank, or a HELOC, or what all this think about how like cumbersome it is right now, right? Decentralized finance has an opportunity to really make that much more efficient and also make it much cheaper, right? Or for you to get much higher rates, right? So why should all these financial companies, these traditional centralized finance companies, get all the money for doing so little work? So yeah, I just want to encourage you guys to check out my website, check out my platform, come to my networking event.
Yes.
You guys are welcome to contact me to learn more.
Thank you so much, Greg, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Greg. Bye.
Have a great evening.
Have a great evening, everyone.